Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Do you really want to buy that 1,000-year whale rubber? Wang Yang looked at Hu Yuhao, feeling puzzled by his decision. Hu Yuhao leaned over and whispered in his ear, quickly. There won't be a second chance. This definitely isn't 1,000-year whale rubber, but 10,000-year whale rubber. That's why it's black. Quickly, pay up. If someone else notices this item, we won't have a chance to buy it anymore. Wang Dong was stunned. He naturally wouldn't question Hu Yuhao further with the mutual trust they both had with one another. He immediately turned around and paid up at the sales counter located at the western end of the room. That's right. This whale rubber was 10,000 years old, just as Hu Yuhao had said. Naturally, it was impossible for him to discern this with his own experience and knowledge. The Ice Empress was the one who had told him the answer. Throughout the course of human history, 10,000-year whale rubber had been extremely rare. Thus, it was no wonder that no one in the treasure appreciation auction recognized this item. The sea was another haven for soul beasts. Rumor had it that the number of soul beasts in the sea was more than 10 times those on land. Moreover, the soul beasts in the sea were ranked as well, and whale-type soul beasts were unquestionably one of the overlords among sea soul beasts. When humans entered the sea, they were practically like meat on a chopping board. No human had dared venture into the depths of the sea. As a result of that, though it was still possible to kill a 1,000-year soul beast if one depended on a powerful soul master. The devil whales were more than 10,000 years old and lived in the deep sea. On top of that, every single one of them was extremely powerful. Who would dare to make contact with their poisonous heads? The Ice Empress was anxiously looking forward to the day when Hu Yuhao became powerful, so she naturally couldn't let such a good item as this 10,000-year whale rubber slip through her fingers. Wang Dong quickly returned after paying, and only then did Hu Yuhao show a relaxed look on his face. The whale rubber was not as eye-catching as the soul bone. A member of the staff from the Treasure Appreciation Pavilion retrieved the whale rubber from the display stand and handed it to Wang Dong. When he got it, Wang Dong immediately shoved it into Hu Yuhao's hands. I hope we really didn't make a mistake with this. Wang Dong couldn't help but think that they'd lost out as he looked at that black gooey item. This black whale rubber wasn't fragrant at all. It was truly difficult for one to believe that it had come from a 10,000-year-old devil whale. Hu Yuhao laughed mischievously and said, "Let's go. We've already gotten the items we wanted. When I get back, I'll get Teacher Ju to find a teacher with a fire attribute martial soul to help us. We'll automatically know whether it was worth it or not once we've eaten it." Wang Dong shook his head. "If you want to eat it, you can do so yourself. I'm not going to eat such a sticky thing. I have eaten a lot of this when I was younger, because I was forced to do so by my family. After I fused with a 1,000-year soul ring, I swore that I would never eat this sticky thing for the rest of my life." Hu Yuhao felt a light bulb go off in his head and said, "It's no wonder your second soul ring is 1,000 years old. Your family is really rich." The two chatted as they headed out. When they passed Bei Bei, they greeted their senior martial brother. Bei Bei asked them to head back first since he wanted to wait for Shusansha, who was still nagging Jiang Nan in every possible way he could. Sea God's Island, Shrek Academy, what? It was that small guy, Hu Yuhao. Ma Xiaotao looked at Yang Xiaozhe with an incredulous look on her face. Yang Xiaozhe nodded and replied, "That's right. It is highly likely that the cold soul power shock you received at that time came from Hu Yuhao. However, it's also possible that he did so unconsciously. His second martial soul was still hidden at the time, so I reckon it protected its host of its own accord when it felt the attack from your evil phoenix fire." With excitement written all over her face, Ma Xiaodao said, "That's great. This is really great. Teacher, the demonic fire inside of me is driving me crazy. Shusanshi's mysterious martial turtle is after all only water attribute and not an ice attribute technique, so the effects are naturally worsening. With Hu Yuhao's ultimate ice attribute, won't I be able to break free from my current predicament? If that's the case, I can represent the Academy and attend the Continental Advanced Academy Soul Dueling Tournament, right?" Yang Xiaozhe nodded with a faint smile and said, It just so happens that you're not yet over 20 years old. If you can stabilize your martial soul, you'll definitely be the winner in this year's academy competition. I have no doubt about it. That's great. I can finally participate. I must look for Xiaotao now and make him suppress the demonic fire inside my body. As she spoke, Ma Xiaotao turned around and ran outside. Yang Xiaozha laughed and said, "You rascal, slow down. Xiaotao ought to have gone to Shrek City to attend the treasure appreciation auction today." I know. Before her voice could be heard, Ma Xiaotao's silhouette had already disappeared into the night sky. Yang Xiaozha shook his head as he felt a little helpless. It really is impossible to change your impetuous temperament. Who's going to be daring enough to court her in the future? There are so many outstanding disciples in the inner courtyard, and yet not a single one dares to woo her. Other than Le Xian, Xiaotao is the most gifted student amongst the female students. I hope that Yuhao's ultimate martial soul can gradually quell the demonic fire inside her body and allow her to become a true fire phoenix like her ancestors. Xiaotao and Wang Dong left Shrek City feeling rather pleased. Even though they didn't know what soul skill Wang Dong would get from the golden right arm bone, they could clearly see that this was an impressively powerful soul bone from its price. It had cost them a whopping 9.5 million gold soul coins. Xiaotao had been somewhat nervous when he'd paid for it, as he hadn't expected his transaction with the treasure-gathering pavilion would be this easy. The favor he owed them this time was too great. Even Wang Dong owed the academy a large favor now. Xiaotao always made sure to clearly remember the favors and insults he received. He'd never forgotten for a second the debt he owed Shrek Academy. "Fuse with that whale rubber tonight when you get back. I'll protect you when I get the soul bone tomorrow. With this soul bone, I'm now confident that I compete with Dai Huabin on even footing, even if I were to face him alone." Wang Dong waved his fist as he spoke. Xiaotao couldn't help but smile when he saw Wang Dong in such high spirits. Xiaotao, Wang Dong, and Xiao Xiao were all currently growing at an astonishing speed. Once Wang Dong fused with his soul bone, their collective strength would take another huge step forward. At that time, they would really deserve the title of being the strongest group in Year 2. With regards to Dai Huabin, Xiaotao had already gradually buried his hatred towards the other party. Dai Huabin had been defeated twice and had been made to kowtow, acknowledging his defeat. That had gone a long way to liberating the stifling feeling he had in his heart. At that moment, the Skydream Iceworm's voice rang out within Xiaotao's mind, warning him of danger. "Yuhao, there's a murderous aura directed towards you." Xiaotao quickly released his spiritual detection to its maximum range. Sure enough, he felt a hidden killing intent not far away from him. However, the range of his spiritual detection wasn't great enough, and thus he wasn't able to accurately determine who his opponents were. Xiaotao took the initiative and pulled Wang Dong's hand back. He tightly clasped Wang Dong's hand, which was softer and more tender than that of a female's. When he did so, the Haodong power immediately connected in their bodies. Xiaotao's expression didn't change, but he spoke under his breath. "There are people in front who are waiting to ambush us. We are further from the academy than we are Shrek City, so when I count to 3, we're going to turn around and run back towards Shrek City as fast as we can. Understand?" Wang Dong spoke in a low tone. "Do you have any idea who they might be?" "I don't know, but they're emitting a murderous aura. Let's hide in Shrek City first and discuss it later. Get ready." The killing intent grew increasingly dense as they walked forward. Xiaotao carefully sent his spiritual detection towards the root of the killing intent and immediately increased the range of his detection. 200 meters away from them, a group of 6 people were quietly lying in wait. From the thick soul power on their bodies, Xiaotao could tell that they were opponents that the two of them could not go up against. 1. Xiaotao spoke in a low tone, but he didn't slow down. At this moment, he definitely couldn't let the enemy discover the changes in their movements. 2, 3. Run. Xiaotao let out a low roar and abruptly carried Wang Dong as he ran in the opposite direction. At the same time, he quickly placed a metal plate on his back. A ball of dazzling white light lit up and Xiaotao and Wang Dong were immediately propelled forwards. They were just like a white shooting star as they made a beeline for the northern gate of Shrek City. Their 6 assailants reacted, then broke cover. Soul rings lit up on all 6 of their bodies. And 5 of the 6 had 5 soul rings on them, while the 6th was actually a 6-ringed soul emperor. 3 of them instantly rose into the air, releasing their respective flying techniques, and all 6 of them rapidly chased after Wang Dong and Hu Yuhao. The disparity in strength between the two parties was simply too great. Though the 2 of them had taken a sudden head start by taking advantage of their unawareness, the distance between the 2 parties rapidly closed as their assailants sped up. Their Haodong power was extremely powerful, but it could only allow their fused strength to reach the 3-ringed level of strength at most. They simply had no chance of winning against their assailants in a direct confrontation. Their 3 enemies that had taken flight were rapidly approaching, and all 3 of them were 5-ringed soul kings. However, Wang Dong had already flown 50 or so meters into the air, so it wouldn't be easy for their enemies to attack them at this distance. Furthermore, Wang Dong's current speed wasn't much slower than that of the people who were chasing them on the ground. They were currently several thousand meters from Shrek Academy's northern gate. Hu Yuhao raised his hand, causing a ball of red light to soar several hundred of meters into the sky before exploding and turning into countless reddish-gold dots that spread through the sky. The 6-ringed Soul Emperor immediately had a change in expression. They were all dressed in black, and their faces were all covered. He couldn't help but let out a low roar after seeing this reddish-golden light. Didn't he say they were just core disciples? This is clearly Shrek Academy's inner courtyard's distress signal. Quick, hurry up and kill them. We're leaving immediately. His last roar was amplified by his soul power. Though this was the outskirts of Shrek City's foundation was Shrek Academy. They were simply in too great of a rush, and Hu Yuhao could only equip a miniature stationary soul crossbow in time. After he raised his right hand, the 3 tubes on its surface immediately came out. He poured his soul power into them, causing 3 bolts of lightning to shoot out. These 3 crossbow bolts were pitch black, and they wouldn't reflect light in this darkness. Furthermore, Fan Yu had specially taught him how to install a silencer during their creation. Because of that, they didn't make any noise as they flew through the dark night. This was another advantage of a stationary soul tool. An ordinary soul tool would directly emit the light of soul power, which would practically be a lamppost in the dark night. Only a stationary soul tool could release a completely traceless attack. However, it was evident that nobody else would be able to aim a stationary soul tool in a situation like this. Only Hu Yuhao, by relying on his spiritual detection, could do this. Wang Dong's mid-air figure paused slightly. He'd completed the transfer of soul power between him and Hu Yuhao. A purplish gold light shot out from his eyes. For the sake of survival, he'd held nothing back in this attack. After releasing his attack, he immediately transferred his soul power back to Wang Dong, who continued speeding up. At this exact instant, 3 pitch-black terrors arrived in front of him soundlessly. With a pang, they exploded simultaneously. Immediately, a wave of black mist covered him, blocking his entire line of sight. Hu Yuhao knew that even if he were to strike a Soul King head-on, he would be unable to cause real damage with his Class 1 soul tool. Because of that, he had chosen to interfere with him. The Soul King paused for a moment, causing the distance between the 2 parties to increase somewhat. Furthermore, Hu Yuhao had instructed Wang Dong to not only fly forwards, but upwards in order to increase the distance between them and the 3 experts on the ground. After all, there was a Soul Emperor commanding them down there. However, their airborne assailants were still 5-ringed Soul Kings. Even if their combination of Soul Rings was subpar, they were still at the Soul King rank. The 2 Soul Kings, who had initially been left behind, quickly caught up to the stunned Soul King, and the 3 of them accelerated together, decreasing the current distance between them and the duo to 50 meters. Wang Dong, fly straight up. Hu Yuhao shouted. At the same time, his 2 soul rings transformed into a single one, and the enormous crystalline and green tattoo on his back slowly emerged with an incomparably tyrannical aura. Wang Dong, who had the help of Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection, could naturally sense the speed that their pursuers were moving at. He was already somewhat despairing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hu Yuhao inwardly counted to himself, and Wang Dong suddenly discovered that their fused Haodong power was pouring towards the former at an incredible rate. Nothing seemed strange on the surface. But Wang Dong could tell that the current Hu Yuhao was like a filled balloon that was compressing unceasingly. What's he doing? Their three enemies were now only 20 meters away from them, and their soul rings had lit up. 15 meters. Their soul skills were already locked and loaded, but the frequency and ways they attacked were all encapsulated within Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection. Just as the three Soul Kings were about to release their attacks, they suddenly felt something strange. The targets in front of them had suddenly lit up. A jade-green light suddenly appeared within the pitch-black sky. This light took the form of a single line, which instantly spread outwards, outlining the figure of a person, including his spine, ribs, and sternum, as well as all the bones within his torso. The three Soul Kings instantly felt the terrifying effects of the ultimate ice element. For a moment, they felt as though the blood in their veins had frozen. They lost complete control over their bodies, and were suspended mid-air in their previous positions as they tried to make their move. However, they were suspended 300 meters above the ground. And once airborne, if you don't go up, you fall down. Therefore, the three Soul Kings soon began to fall from the sky like meteors after remaining suspended for a bit. The green light had only flickered through the sky for a moment, but as soon as it disappeared the Soul Kings began to fall. At the same time, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's expressions turned pale. Even though the green light released from Hui Yuhao's body hadn't targeted Wang Dong, just being near it had caused Wang Dong to be afflicted with a terrifying feeling of coldness. He still felt his wings go somewhat numb despite not being in direct contact with it. Luckily, his wings were already wide open when he was hit by the terrifying coldness. As such, they kept flying straight. On the other hand, Hui Yuhao's face had turned pale due to his excessive consumption of soul power. At the same time, his body had to withstand the burden of all that soul power. However, he couldn't relax yet. He knew that, even though it was strong, that attack just now was nowhere near enough to deal with someone as strong as a Soul King. Furthermore, a fall from their height wasn't enough to kill them either. The thruster in his right hand turned jade green in color. Afterwards, it began to emit a dazzling red light as he poured his remaining soul power into it. When he did so, it released a streak of white flames, and they were immediately propelled towards Shrek City from their current altitude of 300 meters. Hui Yuhao had begun to plan how to run away, as soon as the Sky Dream Iceworm had told him about the enemies lying in ambush. Luckily he'd been warned ahead of time, thus he'd had a lot of time to think. Just as Hui Yuhao had predicted, the three Soul Kings that fell from the sky were only able to recover from their frozen state once they'd descended over 100 meters. They opened their wings with great difficulty and slowed their fall. Even though they were flustered, they'd still been able to regain their composure before they hit the ground. However, they were now unable to reach their two targets that were still soaring through the sky. The Soul Emperor, who was in hot pursuit, suddenly increased his speed and headed towards the place where Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong would land. At this point, he knew that his chances of success were already quite low. His mission would end in failure if he couldn't catch and kill them before they entered Shrek City. However, he still wanted to make one final attempt. If he wasn't able to succeed after this, he would have to flee as fast as possible. The speed that a Soul Emperor could achieve wasn't something that Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong could even imagine with their shallow cultivations. Furthermore, the sixth soul ring of this Soul Emperor was an awe-inspiring 10,000-year black soul ring. The Soul Emperor ran as fast as he could until he reached the Shrek City's northern gate. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong were still around 200 meters from the city walls when he reached the gate. As soon as he reached the gate, he put the tip of his foot into the city wall and began to climb it at an astonishing speed. It only took him an instant to reach the top. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong had consumed most of their soul power by this point. Furthermore, Wang Dong's wings were still under the effect of the green light that Hui Yuhao had released a while ago, and Wang Dong definitely wasn't a Soul King. Most of his chi and blood had been frozen, thus he couldn't release any more power to fly upwards. Thus, they could only helplessly watch as the Soul Emperor standing atop the city walls soared into the sky and charged directly towards them. The number of soul rings on Bei Bei and Shu Sanshi's bodies wasn't 3, but 4. 2 of their soul rings were yellow, while the other 2 were purple. This clearly meant that they had both already become soul ancestors. However, even when the pair saw them, Wang Dong felt that they were so close, and yet so far. They wouldn't make it in time, Wang Dong. Hui Yuhao suddenly shouted. Afterwards, he hugged Wang Dong tightly in his arms. His spiritual detection, sharing had also suddenly disappeared. Wang Dong was immediately startled awake, as the Haodong power in their bodies had begun seething with excitement. The area 10 meters around them then began to light up, as it had been permeated with a very peculiar radiance from their bodies. This radiance was extremely strange. It varied between blue, purple, and gold in color. Moreover, many strange and different fluctuations of soul power were blending inside of the intense light. A huge form appeared behind Wang Dong's back. It was a complete and absolutely magnificent radiant butterfly goddess. On the other hand, the image of a large, vertically pupilled eye appeared behind Hu Yuhao's body. The eye was pale gold, but its pupil emitted a faint purple radiance. Those two huge forms then proceeded to overlap in midair. As soon as they did, they began to merge together. The manifestation of Hu Yuhao's spirit eyes was becoming more and more profound. It had become a purplish blue color, while the golden color it had previously had completely disappeared. On the other hand, Wang Dong's radiant butterfly goddess manifestation began to burn with goldish blue flames as it approached Hu Yuhao's spirit eye. As it burned, the radiant butterfly goddess opened her beautiful wings and slowly wrapped them around manifestation of the spirit eyes. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong were also held together and protected in its embrace. The huge spirit eye seemed extremely mysterious. If you were to look into it, it would almost seem as if there were an endless world inside. As soon as the Soul Emperor got within 30 meters of them, blue, purple, and golden bolts of lightning shot toward him. These streaks of light seemed almost illusory. The places that the light passed through were illuminated by a radiance that seemed to have come from ancient times. It left a dim and twisted, yet dazzling luster behind. Both the Soul Emperor and Soul Kings were shocked when they saw this. Even the rapidly approaching Bei Bei, Shusansha, and Jiang Nan were shocked. The scene in front of them was just too magnificent. The illusory radiance had left a golden road in the sky. The skill displayed just now had been Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong's mighty martial soul fusion, and was also their final trump card. The golden road amidst withering resplendence. The last time they displayed this skill, Hu Yuhao had 1 ring, while Wang Dong had 2. But now, they both had 2 and 3 rings respectively. Both their cultivation and the strength of their bodies were much stronger than last time. When they'd displayed their martial soul fusion skill, they'd thought that the soul power inside of their bodies was depleted. However, they still managed to squeeze out some latent energy and finally execute their strongest move. The pitch-black flames on the Soul Emperor's warblade began to burn even more fervently now. He wasn't blind, and he could easily tell their cultivation from their soul rings. Even if the scene before his eyes was magnificent, in his mind, 1 hit from his sword would be enough to put an end to this light, Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong. However, he quickly realized his mistake. As soon as his black sword came into contact with the dazzling light, the Soul Emperor's mind went blank. Right, Ma Xiaotao had arrived. She'd left the academy from Shrek City's northern gate the moment she saw Hu Yuhao release the inner courtyard disciple distress signal. With her level of speed, she was able to make it just in time to save Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong. Though there were a total of 6 enemies, Ma Xiaodao wasn't afraid in the least. Despite being a girl, she gave off the air of a general as she stood there. Bei Bei caught Hu Yuhao while the speedier Jiang Nan caught Wang Dong. The latter was actually a 4-ringed soul ancestor, making her cultivation no less than Bei Bei's and Shusanshi's. This surprised Hu Yuhao somewhat. No wonder she was a core disciple of the outer courtyard. Junior disciple, are you okay? Bei Bei asked in a low voice. This was the first time Hu Yuhao saw a fierce killing intent in his senior brother's eyes. There was a true fire in his eyes. If Ma Xiaodao hadn't made it in time when they'd fallen from the sky earlier, they would have suffered severe injuries, if not died. We're fine, senior brother. We just overexerted ourselves a little. Hu Yuhao whispered. Bei Bei nodded and gently placed him on the ground. Over on the other side, Jiang Nan was also putting Wang Dong down. Their 6 opponents were all gathered together. The golden light on the Soul Emperor, who'd been struck by the golden road, had finally disappeared by now, but his clothes were burnt apart, and his facial expression was extremely unsightly. Within the blink of an eye, he was forced to waste over 30% of his soul power in order to take on the golden road. He was a Soul Emperor. He'd actually been put into such an embarrassing position by the teamwork of a Soul Grandmaster and a Soul Elder. How could he not be angry? Hidden within his anger, however, was fear. A deep sense of fear. Sure enough, they are worthy of being called core disciples of Shrek Academy. A Soul Elder and a Soul Grandmaster were actually able to escape with their lives from an encirclement consisting of a Soul Emperor and 5 Soul Kings. If this were to be leaked out publicly, who'd believe it? That golden light is probably a mysterious fusion skill. Although he was inwardly furious, the Soul Emperor already had thoughts of retreating. Ma Xiaotao and the other students behind her wouldn't be able to take them on, but at the end of the day they were still students of Shrek Academy. It wouldn't be possible to defeat all of them within a short period of time. On top of that, Shrek Academy was so close to them, and in the event one of their experts came. With that, the commander made a prompt decision. He suddenly waved his right hand, turned around and ran off with his subordinates. You want to run? If I let even one of you escape, this moment can't be called the Berserk Flame Devil Ma Xiaodao. The moment she noticed that they were about to flee, Ma Xiaodao immediately flew into a rage. In the past 100 years, nobody had been presumptuous enough to kill a disciple of Shrek Academy while being this close to Shrek City. As a disciple of the Academy's inner courtyard, her sense of pride towards the Academy was extremely intense. Moreover, she had wanted to find Hu Yuhao to help her do something in the first place, so it was natural that she would spare nothing to help her underclassmen. Ma Xiaodao shouted, Shu Sansha, protect these 2 students. Bei Bei and Jiang Nan Nan, you 2 flank me on the right. If we let even a single one escape, I'll hold you personally accountable. Her 6 opponents were very quick, but Ma Xiaodao was still quicker than them after using her second soul skill, Phoenix Baptism, and her third skill, Soaring Phoenix. Furthermore, she'd activated another soul skill the instant she'd flown out to intercept her opponents. Although it was more accurate to say that they were 2 soul skills, but not skills that came from a soul ring. Ma Xiaotao's legs lit up and reddish-golden patterns started to revolve around them. Following which, reddish-golden flames shot out from her legs. Due to her rapid acceleration, a series of explosions and whistles erupted behind her as she moved. Although Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong were somewhat tired, they were still extremely clear-headed and couldn't help but widen their eyes at this scene. Ma Xiaotao's target was the enormous warblade-wielding Soul Emperor, and she shot straight towards him. The Soul Emperor's perception naturally exceeded that of the Soul Kings beside him. But at that moment he felt something off, and turned around to find that Ma Xiaodao was already in front of him. When facing a life-and-death crisis, the first reaction of an overwhelmingly large majority of people would be self-preservation, and this Soul Emperor wasn't an exception to that rule. He tried his best to lean to the side, while he charged forward in order to dodge Ma Xiaotao's attack. The spectacular aura coming from her attack simply wasn't something he could take head-on. However, it no longer mattered if he dodged or not, since Ma Xiaodao had already forcefully entered the nucleus of their formation. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong only saw Ma Xiaodao charge into the enemy formation and release a terrifying explosion. Her golden reddish flames formed an enormous pillar of flame that was over 10 meters high and released a sonorous phoenix cry. The figure of a fiery phoenix circled around that enormous pillar of flame. 4 figures simultaneously flew out in 4 different directions. The instant the pillar of flame vanished, only these 4 of their 6 opponents remained. Hu Yuhao swallowed a mouthful of saliva and mumbled, Wang Dong, I'm very suspicious as to how we escaped from this senior sister of ours at that time. Wang Dong couldn't even reply. The 4 enemies who'd been sent flying, including the Soul Emperor, all had reddish-golden flames enshrouding their bodies. Their bodies swayed and collapsed to the ground as they had all been similarly affected by her attack. Ma Xiaodao didn't immediately follow up, since her previous attack had drained her soul power by a large amount. She looked towards the sky and then spread her arms and wings wide. She took a deep breath as a large number of faint red dots of light immediately began to gather towards her at a noticeable rate. She was actually recovering her soul power during battle. At this moment, Bei Bei and Jiang Nan Nan had just caught up to her. The 2 of them simultaneously made a move, taking on an enemy Soul King each. The higher one's cultivation was, the faster one's rate of recovery would be. The enemy Soul Emperor was already filled with astonishment. Was she even human? A single Soul Emperor had instantly obtained an overwhelming advantage against 6 opponents. He no longer dared to even try to resist the terrifyingly hot flames that surrounded her body and soul power. Without even daring to waste any more time, he turned around and fled. At this moment, he no longer cared about his teammates. He knew that Shrek Academy students were very powerful, but had never expected them to be this strong. All of them hadn't even been able to face a single Soul Emperor. Ma Xiaotao's eyes had by now turned a fiery red. A trace of disdain appeared at the corners of her mouth as she saw the fleeing Soul Emperor. She flapped her wings once more, causing her body to move horizontally. Her target wasn't the Soul Emperor, but the other living Soul King who Bei Bei and Jiang Nan Nan hadn't taken on. The Soul King was astonished and spared no cost to activate a soul skill in order to block Ma Xiaodao. However, her fiery wings suddenly vanished and were replaced by a red light that severed the sky before vanishing without a trace. Suddenly both the Soul King's body and his soul skill froze in midair. Ma Xiaodao didn't even spare him a glance. Her slender body rose into the air while a sonorous phoenix cry rang out. A countless number of magnificent feathers had appeared on her body before forming a beam of red light, with an incomparably beautiful tail that shot towards the Soul Emperor, as it left behind dots of reddish-golden starlight in the sky. At that moment, her last black soul ring finally lit up with a dazzling light. The golden reddish light devoured everything, and the Soul Emperor and his falling comrades were no exception. He was unable to put up a fight against Ma Xiaodao despite them both being Soul Emperors. Over on the other side, Bei Bei and Jiang Nan Nan hadn't disappointed her. By the time Ma Xiaodao finished her match, one of the two Soul Kings had been electrocuted till he was a block of coal, while the other had been sent flying 10 meters into the air by Jiang Nannan's attack, before being stomped on in midair. Only a minute had passed since Ma Xiaodao had started her onslaught. When it ended, all 6 of their enemies had fallen in this short period of time. When she realized that all of them had been killed, Ma Xiaodao scratched her head somewhat embarrassedly. I forgot to leave someone alive. Bei Bei and Jiang Nan Nan could only stare at her helplessly. Knowing how fierce she was, Bei Bei and Jiang Nan Nan naturally had to go all out the moment she said that she wouldn't let a single one escape. Their opponents were Soul Kings, so they naturally had to be vicious, whatever. I'll let the Academy's Guardian team examine their corpses once we're back. I'm sure they'll be able to find a few hints. Ma Xiaodao waved her hand and brushed off her mistake. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's eyes were filled with nothing but admiration towards Ma Xiaodao. Ma Xiaotao's earlier performance could only be described using the phrase as swift as wind, as aggressive as fire. Even though they were both soul masters, Ma Xiaotao's 6 soul rings seemed to have come alive. They'd flickered one after another, and whenever she'd alternated between them, she'd always used the soul skill most suitable to the situation. Hui Yuhao and the rest could barely use their soul skills this quickly with a single soul ring, yet she'd seemed entirely uninhibited by the number of soul rings she had. This was the main reason that her opponent had had no chance against her, despite them both being Soul Emperors. Of course, Ma Xiaodao was also an extraordinarily talented soul master, who possessed the evil phoenix. Her powerful martial soul and soul bones already made her much stronger than an ordinary 6-ringed soul emperor. By this point, 7 or 8 prominent figures had appeared atop Shrek City's city walls, and a large number of soldiers stood behind them respectfully. Elder Lin and Yang Xiaozhe were included in this group of 7 or 8 people. The distress signal of an inner courtyard disciple was an extremely important matter to Shrek Academy. In truth, they'd already arrived earlier on, with their cultivation levels. It was natural that they'd arrive earlier than Ma Xiaodao. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.